the people's champion. Our mission is love, our vision is love. Jamaicans, for justice, the people's champion, champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law.
Happy Monday. We're happy to be here. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
Yes, so thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. We're going to be taking an opportunity to respond to a few things that arose last week. But I trust those who are joining us online via the nationwide YouTube platform, JFJ's YouTube platform, and those who are listening on Radioland, they're doing quite well. All right, so before we get into last week, Jade, I must say there's some good things happening in Trinidad. And the reasoning for just giving a little bit of a touch there with their constitutional reform process. And I've had the chance to read a report. It's it's 200 odd pages, not a lot.
Not a lot to you.
But it's very good reading because we've heard from Dr. Keith Rowley, the Prime Minister of Trinidad, saying, listen, we're no longer going to be squatters at the door of Privy Council. And I would hope that we can hear similar calls where we get a definitive position from our government here in Jamaica rather than guessing what was the position of the past. We know firmly where we stand on the matter of Privy Council and getting rid of it so we are fully decolonized as a country. And to put in things for the listeners, Trinidad became a republic in 1976, shortly after receiving their independence. So I hear people saying, let's take small steps. Trinidad has taken huge steps before. So has Guyana, because not only did they touch republic status, but for example, their electoral systems and so on, those were completely changed. And the reason for interest with Trinidad, when you look at some of the recommendations, we talk about freedom from non-discrimination, Jade, all the things that we're proposing here at JFJ, they have included it in their report. So you're free from discrimination on the basis of your sexual orientation, gender. Beautiful things happening. They already had press freedom in their constitution, but they are broadening and reframing the scope to look at freedom of the media, because we're now in an age where you have the social media and so on. So listen, if it's such an ambitious document, there are challenges with Trinidad. We know the issues. We've seen court judgments coming from Privy Council that says mandatory life sentence, for example. Death penalty, my apologies. It's still a thing there. Whereas Jamaica, we know the Lambert Watson case in our own country that says, no, that's not allowed, which is why we have the capital punishment issue now. But listen, guys, ambitious is a word I would use, though I have criticisms of several aspects. But in coming weeks, we're going to be talking about that report and look at our own in great detail. So I'm hoping we have like Professor Rosalie Hamilton explaining the dangers of executive president. We're going to be looking at some things in greater detail at JFJ in coming weeks. But I had to start there because it was an exciting read, I must say.
We appreciate your passion, Mikkel, but I appreciate you sharing the report with me because I definitely want to see their perspective. I know that they're far ahead of us in terms of their republic status, but certainly must be instructive in our process.
You'll enjoy the read, I must say. All right. And over to you with the things.
Okay, so we have our right of the day and our trivia questions. I'm going to start with the right of the day for today, which is taken from section 1330 of our constitution. It is our right to protection from torture or inhumane or degrading punishment or other treatment. And it sounds similar to another right that we have in terms of being treated in a respectful manner by a public authority. But this one goes a bit further to speak to that torture and degrading punishment. And it is instructive as later on in the show, we will be talking about one of our major matters at JFJ, which is that case of Mario Dean. And this is a right that is fundamental to the issues that came up in that case. So further on, later on in the show.
Yeah.
Now, our trivia question for today is, what section of the Charter of Rights protect our right to protest? So we have a right in Jamaica to be able to speak out against our government. I'm not going to give you the exact wording because I don't want to make it too easy for you, but that is a section in our Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom. So if you know the answer, you can respond in the chat on Nationwide's YouTube channel, or you can respond on our Instagram. The graphic will be posted there.
Yeah. All right. So to the business at hand, we won't have a guest for a topic today. I just want to address some things coming from the media last week. So we're going to be using the first half of the program, Jade and I, to address some of the common misconceptions of Jamaicans for Justice. And I will just give a brief overview of how we started, the work that we do, and respond to some of the criticism, some of them fair. So I will take the opportunity, certainly. And towards the second half of the program, we're going to be hearing from Mario Dean's mother, Mercy Fraser, and the peaceful protest that we have coming up that we hope you will join us around. So let's start. Last week, the Prime Minister responded following that unfortunate brutal attack, and that's really just an understatement of what we saw happening in Clarendon. On this very show here last week, I expressed condemnation on JFJ's behalf, condolences to the family, and calling for counseling and other support to the family of those who were killed, but certainly those who were also recovering. Following that, we expressed similar condemnation with IRFM, and in the Jamaica Observer article, where I expressed some views on the organization's behalf, there were some backlash. But if you read the article, before I address the backlash, if you read the article, you will see again, we expressed condemnation, we expressed our condolences, and we also called for certain things to be done. For example, we heard from the police that apparently the planning happened in prison by some persons who were incarcerated. So we said, at this stage, where are we with the matter of contrabands? How are we ensuring that illegal firearms coming into the country, they're being dealt with? Some more practical things as we put all hands on deck in dealing with crime. Now, the Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, made some comments, and I issued caution on JFJ's behalf to say that the comments had the possibility, not that the Prime Minister intended it to happen, but the Prime Minister, given his position as head of government, he has a responsibility to be a little bit cautious with his words. And I stand by those comments on JFJ's behalf. One of the things for human rights organizations, while one must receive criticism and be fair in commentary, there is no room for appeasement and no room for moral cowardice. It doesn't work. Because I would ask the question, if it is, and again I stand by the comments that I made, if it is an organization finds a reason to issue a word of caution, given we're operating in a high crime environment, people are fearful, there's a possibility of reprisal. We have seen some 17 police-involved fatal shootings in a matter of 17 days thereabout. When should we have spoken? That's not how public advocacy works. That's not how it works. There's no place for moral cowardice when you're doing human rights work. None whatsoever. So while one must be fair in their utterances, to say no is not the time, I have a challenge with. We do have a challenge with. Right? So we're very fair here at JFJ, and we've heard what you said, but we stand by the comments. And we must, because that is the role of human rights organizations. We cannot be driven by strategic communication to say when is the right time. We were all tearful, Jade, because listening, for example, to the families, I remember listening to one radio station in the afternoon, the 5 o'clock broadcast, and, it was just heartbreaking. And then I switched to the other one. It was the same recording of the family breaking down. These things get at us. But at the same time, I stand by every single word that was in that Jamaica Observer article.
Michael, I think some of the times when we speak to issues of human rights, persons think about it in the context of the exact case that is going on now. Your human rights affect every citizen, even those citizens who are not involved in crime. If we give up our rights, there's no way to get them back. So when we are concerned about statements that appear to sanction actions that are ultra vires to the powers of our police force, it has to be something that is responded to with immediacy, because it is something that affects ultimately your right to due process, which is the same right that allows for a criminal to go straight to jail through the court system, but also the right that prevents an innocent person from going to prison for something they did not do. And therefore, it must be a right that is continuously protected, and not only in the context of when it is convenient for it to be protected.
Or when it reaches the door of someone you know. So, I stated earlier that Jade and I were going to be navigating the waters with addressing some of the common misconceptions. And I'm watching some of the YouTube comments, and I read them all, even when it's not on a Monday. Please ensure that you place your comments in the chat, and we will respond to some of them, and so on. All right. So again, we note the feedback, but this thing about reading the room and strategic communications, again, public advocacy doesn't work like that. You don't wait until things happen. You have to speak preemptively and proactively to ensure that we hold our leaders to account. Now, I've also listened to different journalists on different radio stations, including nationwide. And I think while they hold us accountable as civil society, I would hope that they also exercise particular approaches. So if there are reasonable questions being asked, you reach out, because you want to ensure that constructive dialogue is had. So we're going to be using the opportunity now to comment. So some of the questions that often come to us: who funds JFJ? Do you support criminal rights versus the rights of innocent people? So let me start with one of the basic: who funds JFJ? Because we have about 2 minutes left before the break. Who funds JFJ? Last year, the organization had a total income of 61,200,000 Jamaican dollars. 61,200,000 Jamaican dollars. And it is broken down. Corporate donations gave us 2.3. International donors gave us 50,640,000. We did some small consultancies, and we got $4.3 million. And we do our annual fundraising, and that amounted to less than $4 million, $3.9 million to be exact. So that is how you get the total $61,215,840. That is the money that we received last year. In terms of our expenses for the year, for the period, we expended $64,840,252, broken down into administrative expenses, for example, our utilities and so on, to the tune of $15,735,000. And then direct grant expenses, $49,104,000. On the other side of the break, I will indicate who some of those international donors are and the private sector, and then explain to you how fund comes into a country, generally speaking. So we take the break.
Music users, a license from JCAP is a must for the use of music for entertainment purposes. Respect the music, respect the creators, play by the rules. The time by Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors and Publishers Limited is
1:15.
What was that? Music a play and the people a rock. Everybody asks for the calico jack. Cups up, make a party. Rum punch, send it my way. What you know? Fruit punch mixed with the rum. Link on my friend, them know. Hey, sipping on a vibe, yeah, we happy. Calico jack and then we started. Music a play and the people a rock. Everybody asks for the calico jack. Cups up, make a party. Rum punch, send it my way.
Good health starts with proper hydration. Hydrate your body with Hydrate. Hydrate is purified natural water from rocks 110 feet below the ground. You have never tasted water so great, yet so affordable. Yes, taste and experience it for yourself. Water at its best. Hydrate. Available also as purified alkaline water and ultra-purified distilled water. Bottled by LLNSCS Limited, a subsidiary of Max Pharmaceuticals. Call 876-983-6466.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. Here talking with Jade and I. And we're going to be doing our best to answer some of the questions I know people have. And as I stated at the beginning of the program, I think some criticisms are fair and as we improve as an organization. But I also think there's some misconceptions that people have. So before the break, I was explaining to you that our annual income is a little bit over 61 million Jamaican dollars. And in terms of who those donors are or were during 2023, for example, we receive support from private sector agencies. Continental Baking Company, they have been providing support to us for several years now. And during the course of the year, for example, we did online sessions, training, interventions with different private sector groups. For example, we did some with Digicel Jamaica, if you remember that unfortunate incident where the lady was killed, the suicide murder situation where the spouse killed himself and the partner, who was a former employee at Digicel. So we engaged the staff at Digicel around gender-based violence, domestic violence, and how to safely seek assistance. We get support each year from the Global Fund grant, and that helps us with our work with HIV and AIDS, helping people realize their rights. So, for example, a topic that we're going to be discussing is the unauthorized disclosure of people's HIV status. For example, you leave a relationship with your partner, and then the person go in the community and spread your business. So that is the work that we do. The U.S. Embassy gave us some funds last year to the tune of, I believe, speaking from memory here, some U.S. $35,000. We got support, a small grant from UNAIDS as well. And the EU, we signed an agreement early on in the year to EU, and a portion of the funds were received at the beginning of the year to the tune of 23 million Jamaican dollars. So that is how we get our funds. So just to repeat, so that there is clarity, our international partners include the Global Fund, U.S. Embassy, UNAIDS, and the European Union. That was for last year, 2023. Each year you write a project. Now, Jade, let me explain to listeners. A country, generally how funds come into the country. Some of the same development partners that support JFJ, guys, please think critically as you give criticism. And I ask media practitioners to do the same so you can stem the misinformation and the misunderstandings from happening. A government would sign multilateral and bilateral agreements with different people, different agencies. So, for example, you heard the U.S. Embassy through the ambassador recently giving the government some support for restoration efforts with Beryl. You remember the conversation around the Samoa Agreement, with the government signing that agreement with the European Union. So in other words, these donor agencies would have had engagement with the state itself. They would have gotten the data from the state itself. So they use, for example, Staten. They use this survey, the social and economic survey, and so on. So the state itself would have given context to these agencies. I want me, the practitioners, to also stem the misinformation that would suggest when people come on the radio show and so on and call in, there's no way JFJ or any other agency is going to be taking up themselves and making things seem worse than what it is. That's not how donor funds operate. They're guided by data that also comes from the government, their own observation. I want that to be a statement of clarification. Please. So you can criticize, but we have to ensure that the criticisms are sound. They make sense. It's in keeping with practical things of how bilateral and multilateral agreements work. So in other words, if the rates of police fatalities were low, there wouldn't be any funds supporting that. And let me explain to you all, please bear with me. As I even outline the funds, the source, I want you to appreciate most of the core work that JFJ does. We do not get funding for it. Jade, as one of my senior staff members here, I think sometimes I put a little bit pressure on you, Jade.
A little.
A little. You can be kind. We're on air. So, for example, a lot of the advocacy work that we do, I want you to understand, it's passion. It's passion. There's no budget line that says, for example, last year when the Ministry of Education was finally repealing, the Minister of Education was leading a bill to repeal Section 24 on uncontrollable children. Right? There was no budget line that says, JFJ, go and talk to the government on what they're proposing for uncontrollable children, because what was being proposed was a bad proposal last year. And we had to meet 2 o'clock in the morning. Do you remember those email exchanges?
Absolutely remember. Reading
all pieces of legislation. So I want you to understand that this is what we do. A lot of our work is not even funded. It's people who are driven by passion that do our work. So you heard me mention in the EU, for example, it's just this year that we got funding for it. Our child rights work, no funding. Right now, we're leading a strategic litigation matter. You've heard it in the media. On mentally ill persons who are incarcerated, no justice. No funder is supporting that. It's the good work of Terence Williams, the public law chambers, including John Clark, our board chair, the attorneys at JFJ, Jade and I, and so on. Nobody is supporting that through funding. It's passion and a keen sense of justice that it's getting it done. So again, we don't mind criticisms. But you also have to be minded by where some of those criticisms are coming from. All right, Jade, if you could just read through some of the, very quickly, because we're up on time. I mentioned the funding and so on. Last year, what were some of the good work that you did? Because that's another question that comes that comes up a bit.
Well, persons often ask what we do for the victims, particularly where we see gaps, which is the role of a civil society organization is to fill gaps that your government is not filling. We have supported several persons who have experienced domestic and gender-based violence. More than 100 persons would have been served. We would have also had 10 community-based interventions related to gender-based violence and human rights. We would have trained our youth political leaders, 30 of them. We trained 324 police officers on broad human rights and human rights policing. So when we make these criticisms, we also do the background work to ensure that we won't have to make them again. we would have responded to more than 300 in our legal department, more than 300 reports of human rights violations. We held our partnership meetings with several different agencies. 8 of those were held. We also submitted our recommendations on 6 different pieces of legislation through parliamentary submission and review.
And remember, we had a very good training with some youth political leaders. We invited those from Generation 2000 G2K. We had the PNP youth groups there, UIC, NDM. They were all there.
Yes.
Right? So I just want to put things in context. But some of the question, let's start with this one. Is Jamaicans for Justice anti-police?
No.
No. You heard Jade mention earlier, last year, through her leadership, we trained over 300 police officers, 324. And that's different from the engagement meetings that we have with officers. I wanted to understand that we advocate for officers to have better welfare, psychosocial support. We advocate that officers should not be litigating their ways for better salaries and so on. But we have to ensure that when you have a few bad apples in the force, we can weed them out collectively as an organization. But we work in support and with the support of law enforcement. So we're not anti-police at all. The next question, is JFJ politically affiliated? And I see people asking me if I'm personally politically affiliated. Let me say no. And very frankly, you will never know who I vote for. And I've been voting every single election, both general and local, since I attained the age of 18 years old. And you will never know who Jade votes for either, or anybody else in the organization. Because when time comes for us to have a discussion about what position to take as an organization, political affiliation has no place in those discussions. The organization is a non-partisan one. Some of the criticisms you hear now, we got it when we started in 1999. At the time the PNP was in power, we were told that we were JLP. And when administration switched, it's the same thing. I want to put that in context. We're non-partisan. I don't even know the political affiliation of my board members. Because when we're coming up with discussions as an organization, politics has no play. We focus on how we understand justice to mean, that keen sense of justice, rule of law. And we put our mandate forefront. We take a rights-based approach when we're speaking. The next one, Jade, and you can touch on this one for me. Why does JFJ defend criminals? That's the one I'm seeing in the chat now.
Yes, and the concern that I always raise when people raise this is, have we defended the criminal or have we spoken to a breach of human rights? Which I can't recall ever defending a criminal, but I can recall questioning whether or not human rights have been breached in a situation where we are expected to have principles and rules for our due process. So when it is that, and oftentimes we hear, okay, why do you speak out about when the state does something, but you don't speak out about when the ordinary citizen does something? The ordinary citizen is governed by the normal laws that run our country. If someone attacks you, if you are harmed, if you are murdered, there is law that exists in our Offences Against the Person Act for the police to act on. The difference between that and when a citizen's rights are affected by the state, there is no simple mechanism for a citizen to go through. And people often think about a citizen's rights being affected by the state in a fatal manner. But citizens' rights are affected by the state. We get so many calls about traffic violations, for example, where somebody would have felt as though they have been unfairly targeted by the state, and the state is not following what the law instructs them to do.
So the simple example, Jada,
in relation to a traffic violation, and they'll call, and while
Yes.
that is not within our mandate, if the attorney there is familiar with the provisions, we explain it, because we still see allowing the citizen to understand their rights in connection with interacting with the state under any circumstances is our work.
Yes.
And so we will continue to do so. So even in the instances where people are fatally harmed, we speak out about that, but also in the instances where it is that the state has acted in such a way where it is unclear whether or not actions were proportional, we call for an investigation, or if it
We
is...
have to take the break, Jade. So pause that thought and then
Sure.
we pick it up after.
Grace Foods got the taste that moves you.
Grace is bringing family, food, and fun together in one place. Get ready for Grace Food Festival on August 24th at Hope Gardens. Gates open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Enjoy a day filled with culinary delights, kiddie zone, enough giveaways, back to school village, discounted Grace products, and live performance from Ding Dong and much more. Grace Food Festival, August 24th at Hope Gardens from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Nationwide, 90 FM is an affordable medium to advertise your business. Increase your sales with Nationwide's reasonably priced advertising packages customized to suit your pocket. Contact our sales department today at 630-1210 or 630-1216. That's 630-1210 or 630-1216. Nationwide, 90 FM. Smart advertising, value for your money.
All right, welcome back to Let's Start Justice. I want to ensure that we get through some of these questions quickly. So let me pick up, and I see the comments in the chat, and I will broadly respond to some of them. To the point that Jade was making earlier, as a human rights organization, we focus on what we call state accountability. The simple example that we use, if we're harmed by another citizen, we call on the police. But when it is the state who harms you, who do you call? Who supports you? I think it's going to be important in coming weeks to have another discussion with you to explain cases, for example, like Teron Hewitt, that young man who was shot in his back 2 years ago. I'm going to be explaining to you, Jade and I, Romario Sterling, that video shocked the country when the young man was seen kneeling down, hands behind his head. Then you heard what appeared to be a gunshot. I'm going to be explaining to you Nakia Jackson and the challenges within the coroner's court system. We're going to be hearing from Mercer Fraser shortly, Mario Dean's mother. We're going to be hearing from Matthew Lee's family, because that matter is still before the courts over 14 years. So I want things to put in context about the awesome power of the state. Now, I see the question asking Marigold Weber, who, I'm a nationwide listener generally, so I know she's a fair person. Is JFJ for the victims or the perpetrators? So, Marigold, let me say this. We do not support criminality. We don't. We're not a criminal defense organization. We support rule of law. So, even the accused would have rights in this country. So, for example, if the police suspect you of a crime, the police is not the judge. The police must arrest you in keeping with the use of force policy and the law, take you before the courts, and if you're found guilty, you're dealt with there. So, rule of law is what we support. You talk about victims. We support, for example, children who come in conflict with the law, the rights of children who are wards of the state. That is our child rights work. We support victims and survivors of gender-based domestic and sexual violence. So, for example, if you know someone who is being abused by their partner, you can call JFG and we can help that person get occupation orders, maintenance order, protection orders. That's the work that we do. We focus on governance issues. So, for example, you would hear us talking to the government, the Minister of Justice, on the mandatory minimums for murder. I know some of you are in agreement with those high ones, and we've brought our evidence and our views as to why they're not the best laws. We've given our views, for example, extensive work on the review of the Domestic Violence Act that Minister Olivia Grange is leading on to ensure that if it is that you are a victim of domestic violence, the laws are strong to protect you. That's the work that GFJ does. And as the head of the organization, and I'm speaking on behalf of my board, notwithstanding that media coverage that you heard last week, speaking on behalf of my board, we stand with the work that we're doing now. We are proud of the work that we're doing now, and our team is doing excellent work. Now, there are areas for improvement. We just had a new staff member joining us, Miss James. She's going to be leading our communications work because I think sometimes we're not perhaps sufficiently articulating the efforts of the team and the work that we're collectively doing. I want to put things in context. Even this radio show, it's disheartening that notwithstanding all the corrections that we're here trying to make, the comments that are still in the chat, they're heartbreaking because it seems like there's a resistance to even listening. We're stuck on the politics and what party we support. And again, we don't mind criticism, but criticism must be fair, a sense of justice for everyone, because things can happen to you. A lawyer can tell you how easy it is to come in contact or conflict with the law. It's done as why we're here on Nationwide, Is the EU funding, supporting the Let's Start Justice program so we can explain to you rule of law, explain to you constitutional reform. That's why we're here, to break things down. And you may not agree with us, but even when there's disagreement, I would hope that the disagreements are fair and it's based on what we think is in the best interest of Jamaica. That is what I would hope as we're here. But as I said, there's room for improvement. For example, last year we didn't have any communication staff, Jade, and I'm hoping in another 2 months at least, the website that we had started already, it will be up and running fully, the revamped version. I'm hoping that, not hoping, it must be done. For example, our annual report, which I just quoted the funding from for 2023, those things ought to be on the website so you can see for yourself, because we have to improve our own transparency as an organization. And while we're not going to be doing public relations in the way that is just mere appeasement, we still have to ensure that we communicate well the information about your rights. Like last year, for example, Jade, we developed a Know Your Rights book. Two. And by the way, no donor funded that. We sat in the office and we wrote that book. One for adults. I urge you to read it. You can call the office and get it. And one for children aged 12 to 17. So as we focus on addressing some of the common misconceptions of the organization, I hope that we will, move forward. And let me say this, Dr. Caroline Gomes used to get all of these comments that you're putting forward. It reached her as well.
Well, I've never known this organization, even in my childhood, to not be critiqued. So.
Mm-hmm. And we've had 4 other executive directors since Dr. Gomes. We've had Kay Osborne, Horace Levy, Roger Malcolm, and for a short time before I started JFJ, we had Faye Petgrave. Mm-hmm. So we've had 4. And, as I said, we will continue over the show period to ensure that we respond to the comments and you can give us your feedback and so on. And I hope we're not driven by political affiliation, but by principle. So in other words, if following a general election, things were not to go a particular way that some of you would want it to go, I want you to ask yourself the question, would we still have the same views that we have now? All right? So any other misconceptions that we need to address?
I'm sure there are many more, but I do think that we've fairly spoken to some of the more pressing things that I've seen over the past few days.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I want to say this very quickly. When criticisms again are important, but I'm not sure if people appreciate when some of the comments are made, what the staff goes through. When people call the office and they make threatening and harassing statements and so on. These people are doing good work. As I said, passionate staff members. I'm so proud to be the leader in the front, so to speak, because, you know, first among equals. They're good people, you know. So Jade and the entire JFJ team, you know, continue. You guys are awesome. Yeah?
Thank you.
All right, we're still trying to get Miss Fraser. I know she has an issue with her phone, but while we try to get her, one of the work that we have been doing over the past couple days, and it's a matter that we have been supporting for years now, is the matter of Mario Dean. Jade, I want to give a quick summary. We have the press release here.
Sure. So Mario was a 31-year-old man who was taken into police custody for possession of a spliff, no longer an offense. In fact, it wasn't an offense immediately the year after. While he was in police custody, however, he was killed, and he was killed due to beating. So 6 persons were implicated in his death, 3 inmates and 3 officers. Now, the case against the inmate would have gone through several trials and tribulations, but there were sentences given and that matter was completed. However, the case against the officers has yet to commence due to several delays, many of them related to jury shortage, and other challenges. Up till this year, 2024, at the most recent sitting, the matter was again pushed from its date to a further date, which is in November, Mikhail?
November 18th.
November 18th, for the matter to be heard again due to lack of jury attendance. An issue that we have spoken to many times before the radio show was here. We spoke to it in a separate episode on the availability of jury and the way how we have been managing the provisions under the Jury Act and whether or not that needs to see some reform as well.
And you know, very simply for the listeners to appreciate, the Jury Act stipulates, for example, that summons ought to be issued no less than 21 days, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And what we see, for example, even Justice Bertram Morrison, the presiding judge in the matter, had issued caution to the state to say that how can you basically be issuing these summons less than 3 weeks in one instance, less than 2 weeks in another?
Yes.
So you get the sense that enough is not being done to ensure that we have sufficient juror turnout so you can empanel a jury, right? And we are going to be having this peaceful protest. If you could just put back the flyer on the screen for us. We're going to be having this peaceful protest again with Miss Fraser. She has been organizing it. We're going to be down in Montego Bay with her. And it's going to be held on Wednesday, August 21, 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the Barnett Street Police Station. All right, so we're asking people to join. If it is, okay, let's take the break and then I give you some more logistics.
Music a play and the people a rock. Everybody asks for the calico jack. Cups up, make a party. Rum punch send it my way. What you know? Fruit punch mixed with the rum. Link on my friend, them know. Hey, sipping on a vibe, yeah, we happy. Calico jack and then we started. Music a play and the people a rock. Everybody asks for the calico jack. Cups up, make a party. Rum punch send it my way.
If it's important to you,
it's important to us.
let Nationwide 90 FM be your first choice for your live broadcast.
We'll drive traffic to your company, increase your publicity, and work with your budget.
Reach your target audience with high-quality audio both on air and online.
Nationwide 90 FM should be the driving force to execute your live broadcast.
Contact our sales team today at 630-1210 or 630-1216.
Nationwide 90 FM live broadcasts covering your events and reaching your target audience.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're joined by Miss Mercia Fraser, mother of Mario Dean. Very brave. Years now she has been calling for justice for her son. Good afternoon, Miss Fraser.
Good afternoon.
Mikkel here. Jade will be rejoining me shortly. Thanks again. Let me just start by asking you, and it's a difficult question, how do you feel leading up to the protest, and what is your call for the listeners who are here with us?
How do I feel? Just as usual, you have this tense, lump stomach. I know I have to do this because of my son, and I promise him on his deathbed that I will see to him that he got justice. I was thinking at that time that he will come around. And so I feel a little edgy. I don't know how to explain exactly. It's just that from time to time, the whole feeling come back, like when things were happening and your stomach still turn and everything. And so it's just a little drawback from the past. You got that whole feeling again and all of that. And, just to say, this is 10th anniversary, nothing going on. I don't remember. What's the second question?
Just leading up to the protests. Well, let me reframe. We know that the new trial date has been set for November 18. Now that we have the protest scheduled for Wednesday, what is your call to ensure that we don't miss that November 18 start date?
Well, the call is this. We are going there time and time again, month after month, year after year, and there's nothing going forward or barely go forward. We are calling that, put things in place. Let us go forward with this case. Let us go. 10 years is a long time to wait. 10 years is a very long time to wait. So we are calling that the justice system will just look into it and move this thing forward and let us get it out of the way.
Yes.
Going into court and seeing, you're going to court only to hear, and you sat there for hours to hear that no jurors, know this, know that, and then put off for another couple of months, sometime a year. It doesn't work if in a time that there's a lot of case in there. Why can't we just go for it? And if there is no way you can go for it in Montego Bay, I'm still appealing. Yes. Take it somewhere else. Take it into Kingston. Take it into St. Anne. Take it somewhere else where we can move along with it. It's full time for it to get over it. It's full time for it to stop reminding me how cruel my son died.
Yes.
It's a cruel act, and it's not a nice thing to keep repeating that thing. You're going to court, he was beaten in jail and that. It's a cruel thing to keep repeating that the person has to keep reliving it. And that's what happened every time I'm to go in court. I relive that moment.
Yes. And just for purposes of the listeners, Ms. Fraser, you know this already. We've written to the police commissioner. We have not yet gotten a response. asking for more to be done by the police down by the West to ensure that the summons are issued in the time period within which they should, that 21 days. Greater effort should be done so that we get enough people turning out for jury duty. We've also written to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution asking for a rethinking, reconsideration to have the matter transferred to the Home Circuit Court in Kingston, because the cost, they're citing financial cost as the reason for not having the matter transferred. And JFJ, Ms. Fraser, we're citing that it is in the interest of justice, state accountability, that you weigh with the financial cost, because I think greater accountability must be on the state, Ms. Fraser. Yeah. But what can you just make your appeal for people to turn out on Wednesday? Because you will do a better job. So if you could make your appeal and just give the details on the protest and what you do each year.
Jamaica, I'm asking you, if you can come in from other parish, a lot of you came in for the funeral, even from St. Thomas, Portland. If you can come in on Wednesday 21st at Barney Street, we're starting at 10 in the morning and we go until midday. Right?
Yes.
Just join us. It's a peaceful stand-up demonstration. It's a peaceful way of honoring Mario at this time. 10 years, it's just a peaceful way. Nobody should think that we're going to demonstrate, we're going to make noise and that and police going to know. We're going to stand up in honor of Mario, and we're just asking that you join us. From the west, from the east, wherever you can come from, I'm appealing. I'm begging for Mario. Okay?
Thank you so much, Ms. Fraser, and your bravery. It's admirable. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Okay.
Have
Thank
a good
you
day.
much for having me.
Thanks. To the listeners as well, for those who are leaving Kingston, we can make arrangements to have you join with us via bus. So you can, what is Nicholas's number?
Well, you can reach out in our Instagram DMs. You can also, if you look at the flyer that was posted up earlier, and it will also be on our Instagram, that flyer, it will have a QR code. You can scan and register for it. And once you're registered, you would be able to select if you are going to take the bus, which we would be supplying. There is, should I still provide this?
The number? Yes, because Nicholas has it up on the flyer, actually.
Oh, okay, great.
Not his personal number, just ensure it's not the personal number you're giving out to the team.
Okay, yes. So let me just...
let me double check quick.
Double
Okay,
check
here
that,
it is.
yes.
549-1137. That's the
Yes.
number for you to call. So we did not give his personal number out in error.
They're mixed up in my phone. I'm
No,
not the
no.
best person for that.
All right, I see a question here by Valmac asking the other side request an appeal for a juror to stay when one side. So because you have the right to a jury trial, the state must ask you permission. So remember, you have 3 officers who are standing trial now,
Yes.
waiting for so they also have the right to a fair trial. So even though we stand in support of Mario Dean Mercer Fraser here, we do recognize that the officers do have a right to a jury trial or not, and they opted for a jury trial. So it's not something, again, even though we support Ms. Fraser, we can't negate
The rule
our
of law,
own
yes.
our own position as an organization to
Yes.
say that because of this particular situation, we would be calling for a judge-only trial. I know the mother, of course, would prefer that, certainly, but JFJ, we have to ensure that we stand on principle at all times in our
Yes.
calls. So this is just an idea of several cases and matters that we have, and I think, maybe one day soon we have to get Yvonne Lee, the mother of Matthew Lee.
Yes.
So you see, when people say criminal rights and so on, organization, Matthew Lee, a young man, was killed because guess what? The friend that he had, how dare he live in an inner city community? That's how Matthew Lee was killed, just because of where he was. So we're going to be sharing these cases and have some of the families speak on the show, so maybe you can appreciate a little bit more. So when you say criminal rights and so on, Nakia Jackson.
Innocent man. Innocent man.
You know, we talk about the legacy of Michael Gale. Ask yourself the question, the position that we have now, then would we have it now because of politics? You know, we have to hold ourselves accountable while you hold us accountable as well. Let me repeat, because I said it at the start of the program, we issued condemnation of the Cherry Tree Lane
murders, yes.
massacre last week at the start of this very program.
Yes.
Last week. At the start of this very program, we issued both condemnation and condolence to the family. We also did it with IRI FM, the very article in Jamaica Observer that my comments were quoted from, which we stand by. I also said that the condemnation and condolences were issued there. So I see Marigold asking a question, why we don't speak for the victims as much. I think the thing, Marigold, what I ask you to consider, the organization's mandate focuses on state accountability, right? So if today we speak on a particular matter, let me not use the brutal attack of Cherry Tree Lane, because we spoke there. But, you know, you hear, unfortunately, we live in a high crime environment. If today we speak on this matter, what would be the expectations tomorrow? And so on. You understand? So just put that in context, because, again, state accountability is what we focus on. Is the state doing enough to ensure that they can catch these killers and in keeping with the law, bring them to justice? The police, for example, do they have the tools to do their work? You know, those are some of the things I want us to think about. All right?
I just want to encourage some of the persons in the YouTube chat to look to our YouTube channel, where there is videos from the families of Nakia Jackson, Matthew Lee, Mario Dean, and many of the other cases that we have represented over the years, and hear their account and ask yourselves if these persons are also victims as we do our accountability work here.
Yeah. So it's much, but I think, again, I'm so excited with Tashua being here, because, you know, to be fair to some people, we have to ensure that we do our part with the public education. And yes, we have the radio show, but you see, already 1 hour pass, and it's like we feel like we have much to respond to. So we can also improve, and I'm hoping that the website will address some of the issues.
Yes.
But to the JFJ team, let me say this: continue to be strong in the work that you're doing, and ensure that even in the face of adversity and some of the pushback that you're getting, we stand on principle, we're guided by our mandate, and as I stated, appeasement and moral cowardice has no place in the work that we're doing, and we remain fair in what we're doing as best as we can, and we always must be driven by integrity. That's what we do here.
Right.
So
I'll
no
give
trivia?
you my trivia response, but I haven't gotten a correct response as yet on either platform.
Where's news commentator?
He came on a bit late, so I think he missed the trivia at the beginning. But the response for the trivia question, the question was, what section of our Charter of Rights protects our right to protest? So that would be section 13(3)(e) of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. That is section 13 of your Constitution. So section 13(3)(e).
Yes, and just to clarify, and you're not wrong, but just to say that we do not have an expressed provision for right to protest.
We have a right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association,
yes,
which is interpreted to allow for your right to public protest as well.
All right, and then of course you have to do what we do to ensure that you get a permit from the police, which is what we did.
Absolutely.
To Tam, I've seen all your comments, Tam, and even though I don't think you are fair in some of them, just know that starting next week you can call in and we can have respectful dialogue as of next week, all right?
And again, those in the chat that are interested in the protest, the link is on our social media. We share the numbers, and you can just let us know if you'd like to participate, and we're providing transportation.
All right, thank you so much. You have a good day and enjoy the rest of it.
Jamaicans, for justice, the people's champion, champion, champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
JP said me is banana chips. 20% more chips in the banana left them crown. The time by JP said Mary's banana chips is
2 o'clock.
Public opinion.
Stop this foolish about this jail